Welcome to the Oxygen Alliance YouTube channel, where we bring you videos on installation, maintenance, and various trainings on oxygen equipment and devices. If you have comments and or questions, drop them in the comment section below or write to us info@oxygenalliance.org. Remember to like our videos, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell.
All right, greetings to everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's Oxygen Talk, brought to you by the Oxygen Alliance. My name is Mari Lungu, tuning in from Lilongwe, Malawi, and we're very much interested in just knowing where each and every one of you is joining. So please paste your name and your location in the chat so that we have an understanding of where each one of you is joining us from. If you are also not added to our mailing list, please also drop your email in the chat, and we'll try and make sure that our communications team adds you to our mailing list so that you keep getting frequent updates from the Oxygen Alliance every time we release new content. So today we are having our team from the OpenO2 as usual, and this time around, we have a new set of people who will be presenting to us. So the OpenO2 has onboarded a new group of interns. So we have Janet Chalera, Dominic Mapanje, and Elizabeth, who I'm sure most of you are already familiar with. And today, the topic that they are going to focus on is post-dose oxygen generation. So please stick around to learn more about post-dose. Please make sure to keep your microphones turned off. Your videos should also be turned off so that we get as much content from the team. If you have any questions, please just write them down. At the end of the session, we are going to have a Q&A session, which will allow you to either make comments or ask questions that you may have along the way. So to kickstart our presentation, let me hand over the floor to Janet. So over to you, Janet.
Right. Thank you so much, Mari, for the introduction. So as already mentioned, I am Janet Jalera, and I'll give you a brief introduction to the topic. My camera is not working, but I hope you can hear me fine. You can just give me a thumbs up.
Yeah,
so,
we can hear you, Janet.
Thank you so much. Moving on, in our presentation, we are going to learn about different oxygen generation systems that are there. So we are going to learn about how they work, how they are being applied in the health industry, their limitations, and of course, opportunities for future innovations. Let us look at an oxygen concentrator briefly. So an oxygen concentrator is a device that is used to provide therapeutic oxygen to patients. So it takes in ambient air, filters out nitrogen, and gives out oxygen to the patients. Our topic today is post-flow oxygen generation, and the phrase can be divided into two. So we are looking at the generation of oxygen, which I have just explained, and the delivery system. So the post-flow oxygen delivery system is actually a delivery system that delivers oxygen to patients in pulses synchronized with their breathing. So this means that oxygen is actually given to the patient as they are breathing in, but as they are exhaling, the supply of oxygen is cut off. This delivery system can actually be used with different sources of oxygen, namely the concentrators and the cylinders, but it is more prominently used with portable oxygen concentrators. So this is the small device that I'm showing there. So it is actually an oxygen concentrator, but it has been made into a small compact size. So although it has everything that a concentrator has, it has been made into a small size such that it is portable and can be carried around by patients. So moving on, a brief history on the post-dose oxygen concentrator. This technology emerged around 1980, and it was there as an alternative to continuous flow of oxygen. So the concept behind it was to deliver oxygen only when the user is inhaling, thereby conserving oxygen. So as you can agree with me, that as you are breathing, you don't necessarily inhale and exhale at the same time. So even though you're being given a continuous flow of oxygen, you only take in oxygen as you're inhaling. But as you're exhaling, the oxygen is wasted. Therefore, this modality came in to negate that problem. So moving on, why is this modality important? So as I've explained that post-flow is helping to conserve oxygen. As you can see on the graph that has been shown, in continuous flow, oxygen is being supplied throughout the breathing pattern of the individual. But in post-flow, oxygen is being supplied only as the patient is inhaling. Hence, during the exhalation stage, oxygen is being conserved. So post-flow is also important for patients who need supplemental oxygen while being active. So not all patients are actually bedridden. So for patients who are still active but need a supplemental oxygen, post-flow is the modality to use. So just a brief explanation even on the conservation part. Can I have the previous slide? During COVID-19, the flow rate being given to patients was actually 15 liters per minute. But so let me just explain something else before I explain that. I'm sorry. So the average, for the average adult human being, we actually exhale more than we inhale. That means we spend more time exhaling than inhaling. And statistics show that we inhale for a third of a given time and exhale for 2/3 of that time. So if, for example, if we're being given a minute, within that minute, only for 20 seconds are we inhaling, but for the rest of the seconds, which is 40 seconds, we are exhaling. So, for example, if we are being given 15 liters per minute, that means that we take in only a third of that air, which is 5 liters, and 10 liters is actually wasted. Therefore, this modality is coming in to mitigate the problem of losing oxygen. So what are the components of oxygen generators? So as I've already explained, that these pulse flow oxygen generators actually have a concentrator unit. So everything that is found in an oxygen concentrator is being found in these oxygen generators. And in addition, these generators have got sensors. So different types of sensors are being used, such as the pressure sensors and the motion sensors. So the duty of these sensors is to detect the onset of inhalation for the patient. So when the onset has been detected, the post-delivery system comes in to deliver the pulse to the patient. And in addition to that, saying that these systems are portable, they have batteries, so it enables patients to use them wherever they please. So reaching this juncture, my colleague Elizabeth will continue from there.
Thank you so much, Janet. My name is Elizabeth Tabalava, and I will continue with you the presentation, taking you through the principles of operation of first dose oxygen therapy. To begin with, so the first flow oxygen technology operates on a simple principle whereby it does deliver oxygen only when the patient inhales. So it produces oxygen just on demand. For us to understand this, I have tried to explain this process using these 4 steps, whereby I'm saying that the first step is inhalation detection. So first, those oxygen generators physically utilize sensors to detect when a patient inhales. So during inhalation, there is contraction of the diaphragm, raising the intercostal muscles, and then increasing the volume in the thoracic muscles. So there is decrease in pressure in the lungs. So this decrease in pressure allows any external air from different sources to rush into the inside for use. So it is in the same manner that as you're inhaling, there is a reduced amount of pressure, and then the oxygen sensors, they do trigger that, oh, now we're having a reduced amount of pressure. So I think this is a sign that there is a call for something. So the decreased pressure makes the system through a nasocannula sensor to deliver oxygen from external source of oxygen during that time. So it can be either an oxygen concentrator or a cylinder. So since these sensors are used, can be pressure-based, others do use motion sensors such as accelerometer. But this time around, let us just consider much for the pressure sensor to be used. Now, when the triggering of oxygen is done, then during this inhalation process, then there is a release of a burst of pulse of oxygen from the oxygen's delivery system. So it was also known as a burst of bolus. So that is why even the name of the pulse flow, it is also sometimes as a pulse dose. So as you know, a dose is a prescribed amount of, let's say, a pill or treatment given to a patient. So even in this state, that bolus, it is amount of oxygen that is actually measured according to the need of the patient, and it is sent through the nasal cannulas to the patient. So as you can see here, now we have moved from the detection of the inhalation, and now it is triggering the oxygen release, and then we are having now the oxygen delivery. So oxygen, many times, it is delivered in milliliters compared to continuous flow, whereby we do deliver oxygen in liters per minute. So why is it so? Because the pulse dose setting, it is having different oxygen conservers that actually section the amount of oxygen to be given. So they put the oxygen in different ratios, such as 3:1 or 6:1. What I'm trying to say is, per 1 liter of oxygen that is set on the oxygen concentrator, it will be divided by 3, and then meaning if it was 1,000 milliliters, it means we are going to give the patient 333 milliliters. So at the end of an exhalation, pressure is about 1.5 psi. So the sensor is able to know that, okay, due to this pressure that is being sensed, the next step that is going to be followed will be inhalation. So after each pulse of oxygen is delivered, there is a brief pause. Now we're going to the fourth step, which is pause between pulse. So there is a brief pause because the next pause is before the next pause is released. So during this pause, no oxygen is delivered, allowing the patient to exhale naturally without wasting time. That is why at the beginning I said that the pulse dose technology only provides oxygen when it is on demand. So using this process, we are seeing that the oxygen capacity of pulse flow is determined by the volume of oxygen delivered within each inhalation. As we move to the next slide, I just want to explain to you what is happening actually in of the whole cycle, but from this graph. I believe it looks familiar because even my colleague used the same graph for demonstration between continuous and pulse flow. So as we can see here, we're having different portions demarcated with different activities such as inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. So this is the moment whereby from the first portion of inhalation, when the pressure sensor senses that they are now the patient is now in the inhalation stage, now there is a pulse flow. Now there is a burst of oxygen supplied to the patient. So just after the inhalation, then we have exhalation. As you can see, exhalation period is longer compared to inhalation. So if we are to use continuous flow, it means we are having a long period of time whereby we are supplying oxygen without using it. But now the pulse dose technology here, we are conserving this oxygen that could have been lost as we're having the patient exhaling. So this is how now it goes as a cycle, that inhalation is detected, and then there's trigger of oxygen, and then oxygen is delivered to a bolus or a burst, and then there is a pause between each pulse. So this is it, mostly how this process works. Moving on, let us look at some of the first dose settings. Things we need to determine oxygen needs for oxygen therapy. So there are a number of things that we're going to look into that are important that we need to look into as we are about to give the oxygen therapy. The first of it is prescription and medical assessment. So before initiating oxygen therapy, patients undergo a medical assessment conducted by healthcare professionals, can be the doctor or the nurse. So this assessment can include evaluations such as pulmonary function test, arterial blood gas analysis, and oxygen saturation measurements. So based on the results of the prescription for oxygen therapy, and then it is now good time whereby the doctor can decide to say, okay, we're going to put this patient on this oxygen therapy. So it is specific to the requirement of oxygen flow rate or first dose setting according to different reasons, as there are different types of respiratory failures. So we have type 1 respiratory failure, whereby the therapy is just aimed to keep the blood oxygen saturation levels from 94 to 98%. And we also have type 2 respiratory failures, and which we are aiming that we are trying to maintain the blood oxygen saturation levels between 88 to 92. But as we can see, in both scenarios, whether it's type 1 or type 2, we're just trying to maintain an oxygen saturation level of greater than 90%, which is recommended even by the WHO. Moving forward, let us understand another need that is supposed to be determined, that helps in determining for oxygen therapy, which is the oxygen saturation monitoring. So pulse flow oxygen system often incorporate pulse oximeters to continuously monitor the patient oxygen saturation levels. So these devices measure the percentage of oxygen bound to hemoglobin in the blood. And oxygen saturation provides the variable feedback on the effectiveness of oxygen therapy. So as we can see in our picture here, we are having an example where this is a portable oxygen concentrator, and we can see a finger inserted in the pulse oximetry, whereby they are monitoring the oxygen saturation in the body. And this one is going to give heads up to say, okay, this therapy session is working perfectly, as the person is able to maintain oxygen saturation of about 90%, or maybe I think we should adjust the dose setting, as maybe the saturation is still decreased with time. So as we can see, we are happily able to appreciate that these are determining factors of the oxygen therapy. Another thing that we need to look into is the activity level and breathing patterns. So the pulse dose setting may be adjusted based on the patient's activity level and breathing patterns. For example, a higher pulse dose setting may be prescribed during physical extension or periods of increased oxygen demand. So this can be activities such as maybe you're doing physical exercises or you're moving around, while a lower pulse dose setting may be sufficient during maybe resting or sleeping when the oxygen requirements are really reduced. And this helps us to understand and even see if, okay, to avoid any kind of unnecessary problems that may arise due to misunderstanding of the patient's activity level. Next, the other thing that determines the oxygen needs for oxygen therapy is the patient feedback and comfort. Since the system is put in place to help a person who does different things, it is possible to be getting feedback from there. So the patient really plays an active role in determining the optimal pulse dose settings by providing feedback on their comfort and oxygenation levels. I believe you have ever heard at some point that maybe due to an inappropriate maybe amount of maybe the flow rates that you're giving to the patient, it is bringing discomfort to the patient. So asking the patient or feedback that we get from the patient, it will help us to know if that dose setting it is right and bringing the reliable comfort and also giving the right intention of the level of therapy that you are giving to the patient. So all these things that are going to be determining the oxygen therapy needed. And lastly, we are going to look at titration and monitoring. So we may want to understand what titration is. So I've just put a simple meaning here to say titration and monitoring refers to the process of adjusting first dose settings to achieve the optimal oxygenation while minimizing oxygen wastage. In as much as this technology is there to avoid any kind of wastage, we are trying as much as possible to make sure that we continuously monitor the effectiveness of each first dose that we are setting for the patient. So healthcare providers may titrate the personal settings during maybe initial setup or subsequent follow-up visits, or maybe check-up times on clinical assessment and oxygen saturation monitoring. So we can see these things are actually interconnected, as even the oxygen saturation here is also giving us the same feedback that can help in making the next decision. So from the graphic, this is a titration monitoring device, which is automatic. And we can see that when we incorporate this in the oxygen therapy, it can literally reduce the risk of any hypoxemia. And also it can reduce the need of a patient being around, making the whole system good for use maybe for home care. So after looking at this, I will bring in something that is also related to the first dose flow, first dose setting, but now this is mostly used in oxygen cylinders. So from the picture right here, this is an oxygen conserving regulator. I think some of you have seen them before, some of you have not, but this is a pneumatic oxygen conserver. Its main function is to bring in ratios of oxygen to be given to the patient. As I mentioned earlier, that as we are conserving these oxygen levels, we are portioning the oxygen into different ratios. So I mentioned that we can choose to give the patient oxygen at the level of 3:1 or 6:1, meaning for every 1 liter of oxygen that we are giving to the patient, if we have set it at 3:1, and then we'll be able to give them 333 milliliters. So also, these oxygen conserving regulators, they do give a first dose of oxygen to a patient only when the patient inhales. So we can see that it is the very same technology, but now we are using it on a cylinder. So we are able to appreciate that by the end of the time, we'll be able to actually keep the cylinders last about maybe 5 times longer than when we're using it on continuous oxygen regulator at the same flow rate. I believe this is well and clear enough. In the next slide, there is another type of the oxygen conserver, but this one is electronic. This one, it has the battery system inside, a sensor inside, but now I can just say it is some kind of a limiting moment whereby the device will not work when the patient breathes through the mouth. So it is only effective as the patient is breathing through the nose, through the cannula. So in all these situations, we are able to see that these oxygen conservers or regulators, they are helping in saving the oxygen that can be given to our patients, and even the same technology, if it is in a portable oxygen concentrator, we can be saving the battery life of that portable oxygen concentrator and even the oxygen conserver itself. So next, I will talk about clinical applications of the first dose setting. And different of them and many of them, but today I'm going to just talk about 3 of these, of which one of it is that the first dose setting technology is actually used in treating respiratory conditions requiring oxygen therapy. Earlier, my colleague mentioned of issues of concerning chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD. So these conditions, they do require sustenance of people's lives by giving them extra oxygen. So from the picture up that is on top, we can see this kid connected to this oxygen cylinder. And I believe they are treating this baby because maybe there is a certain respiratory failure that is within the baby. And another thing is that we can vividly see that the first dose technology is also used for home oxygen therapy. As I mentioned earlier, that we are actually having this amount of oxygen given in small amounts at the right time, just in inhalation. And actually, they have used this technology to be incorporated in portable oxygen concentrator, which is just known as POC. So these ones, they have helped to make the system even to improve the patient comfort and compliance. So in terms of that, we are also increasing to see that it has made the oxygen concentrator to be portable enough. As you can see in the picture down there, that's an image of an oxygen concentrator, and the other lady is just carrying it as a handbag, which is portable enough. She can be moving around with it, so you can travel with it, go and do outdoor activities with it, which is luxurious enough. So we are just appreciating and seeing the importance of this technology. Now, let us look at the advantages we are getting for the first dose oxygen generation. I will talk specifically for the advantages that are seen as I'll explain something in general about the advantages, as in the following slides, my colleague will also talk about some advantages, but specifically for a portable oxygen concentrator. So we are having an improved quality of life as one of the advantage of using personal oxygen generators. So these oxygen concentrators, we can actually appreciate even from the picture that we're seeing that this old man is able to go out by the sea, enjoying his life, which is one element of improving the quality of life. It would be different case if maybe a patient is just sitting at home by the bedside with the big oxygen concentrator for months and months. Other people can stay on the oxygen concentrator maybe for 6 years. So imagine without going out. But now with the use of the first dose oxygen generation, there is an improvement in the quality of life, as they are actually portable enough and they can move around with them and they are safe. In the next slides, I will talk more about the advantages of pressed flow oxygen concentrator, but now for oxygen cylinders. So as I talked earlier about the oxygen conservers that are used on the oxygen cylinders, so we are having the conservation of oxygen resources, as now there's no kind of oxygen wastage, as each and every percentage of oxygen delivered to the patient is used in the right time of inhalation, as during exhalation we're not supplying any oxygen which can be wasted during that process. And also this is increasing the efficiency in oxygen delivery and also improving the cost effectiveness, as you do not really need to be refilling the cylinders over and over. Hence, you're even saving cost for that. So I'll just mention that at some point, maybe in the upcoming course, we are going to talk about these oxygen conservers in detail. Maybe we may be interested to know more about them. So reaching this far, I will then invite my colleague, Dominic Mabanje, to talk about the advantages of portable first dose oxygen concentrators.
Okay, so I'm going to proceed with the advantages of portable first dose oxygen concentrators. So it has already been said, I am Dominic. So let's move on. So it has already been said that these devices are mostly used by those people who want to lead an active lifestyle, and that these devices are actually portable. So what are some of the advantages of these devices? So we have already seen that these devices have been made compact, yet very efficient, lightweight, and also they are battery powered. So you ensure that you actually use them for a longer period with some comfortability. And also it has been said that they actually detect breaths. And there's also that this should be known that these modern devices have also greater sensitivity to shallow breaths, especially during sleep and also when you are doing activities which would require pattern changes in breaths. And they also have reduced noise levels. This is actually comes in hand when you are actually doing your everyday work. You don't want a noisy machine by your side. And also during sleep, because you do not want a machine disturbing your sleep with the noise. And these modern devices have actually been made with simple customizable settings, which can be tailored for individual needs. But there are some considerations and limitations that you have to actually take into account when you are using these devices. For the considerations, there's you have to consider the condition of the patient. So there are some conditions that you don't actually need to use the post-dose concentrator, oxygen concentrator. You will require actually a continuous oxygen concentrator. So you have to consider the conditions. This is actually done by the healthcare provider or your doctor. You actually consider whether you should use a post-dose or you should actually use a continuous concentrator. And also how it is going to be used. So these post-dose machines cannot be used with BiPAP or CPAP. So you have to consider that when you are actually going to use these devices, the BiPAP or the CPAP machines, you have to use the continuous flow. So in this case, you are not going to use the post-dose. And also, since you are using them at home, to be able to lead an active lifestyle, you have to be using it at home. There's need that you should be regularly monitoring your oxygen saturations in the blood, and also adjusting the post-dose settings on your device so that they should match the condition of your health. So there are some limitations that comes with these devices. So we have said that they are portable, yes, they're efficient, they are lightweight, but also they have limited flow rates. So these are smaller devices, so they have limited flow rates. So for higher flow rates, it is actually recommended, or the doctor actually recommend that you use a continuous flow of oxygen delivery. And there are also cases where you have inaccurate detection of breaths, that is during sleep, or when you are breathing with using your mouth. And also there have been issues of inaccurate detection of inhalation and exhalation during activities when your breaths do change in their pattern. And there's also been issues of overbreathing the unit. That is to mean that you are having more breaths per minute than the unit can actually provide. So you are breathing more than what the machine can actually provide. And I have also said that these machines cannot, these portable oxygen concentrators or the post-dose oxygen delivery method cannot be used with CPAP or cannot also be used with the BiPAP machines. So in this case, the post-dose method of oxygen delivery is limited. So you have to actually use the continuous flow method of oxygen delivery. And let's go to to the recent advances and innovations that are actually there currently. So, as technology is emerging, these devices are being made compact, it has already been said, lightweight, and also having an improved battery capacity. And they are also trying to make them, or there are researches or developments that are actually trying to make these devices be very accurate in detecting inhalation, especially, as I have already said, during sleep and also during activities which changes the breathing pattern. So, with this, we have said also that you can use the continuous flow in some conditions, and you can also use the pulse flow in some conditions. So there are some devices that are being made to have both continuous flow and also both the and the pulse flow settings. Like the Seiko Eclipse 5, it has both the continuous and both the pulse flow. So this comes in handy when the patient actually at times needs the continuous flow and at times needs the pulse flow settings. So since these devices are mostly used at home, there's need that you communicate to your doctor or your healthcare provider regularly. How do you do this? So we come to integration with telemedicine and remote patient monitoring. A crucial part in this is the pulse oximeter, which actually detects or measures the oxygen blood saturation in your body, and it actually gives you the percentages. So as we can see in the picture, there's this modern technology where the pulse oximeter is actually integrated with your phone, so you can view the measurements through an app in your phone. And these measurements can be sent to your doctor. So you can see the pictures being sent over the internet, and your doctor is able to view the results. And therefore, your doctor can actually provide feedback, or actually can guide you on what you should do next, depending on your current condition or health status. So what are some real-world examples, or there's some success stories that are there? So we know that this the post has actually brought impact to the lives of people, especially when using these portable devices. So as we can see in the picture, that is a biker who was informed that he needs to be using oxygen 24/7. That is, all every day has to be on oxygen. At first, he says he thought his life was over with. He was given an oxygen tank, but then you can't move around. You can't be moving around with an oxygen tank. Then he heard of these portable oxygen concentrators, which use actually the post-dose delivery method. So he started using it. They are lightweight and they are easy to use, as he also confirmed it. So as you can see right now in the picture, he is on his recumbent bike, and he is carrying a portable oxygen concentrator. Only that we can see it here, but he is. You can find this story on Oxgo YouTube channel, where you can actually confirm it, and also you can actually watch other success stories. And more of those real-world examples, we have this COPD athlete, that is to say chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. So he was diagnosed with COPD. He says he's constantly breathless. When he talks, he's breathless. When he laughs, he's breathless. When he walks, he's breathless. That is to mean when he does any activity, he's mostly breathless. Therefore, there's need for oxygen therapy. So there's always a way to make life better. This guy got the portable oxygen concentrator, as you can see in the picture. He's carrying actually a Respironics Simple Go concentrator made by Philips. So you can see it's just a small backpack. You can carry it around. You can be using it. You can carry it when you are as he's an athlete, when he's jogging, he can carry it. As you can see, it's also carrying bags. I assume that is the airport. So you can have, you can carry it anywhere you go, and you can go on doing your normal activities. This story can be found on Direct Home Medical channel on YouTube. So you can confirm it for yourself, and you can also see other success stories. So we can actually see that this post-dose oxygen delivery method is actually crucial and has brought an impact on those who have pulmonary illnesses, or who need oxygen therapy but need to be leading their active life. So on the same impact of these devices have brought, we have seen that they are actually efficient. We have seen that they are lightweight. You can carry them around, and they bring comfortability since they are actually small and not those other traditional oxygen concentrators that we see around, which you cannot be moving around with. So this actually enhances patient mobility and independence. So they can go about their day carrying that small oxygen concentrator using the post-dose. And on clinical outcomes, these devices actually deliver effectively. They can deliver and also maintain an optimal oxygen saturation levels in the blood, no more less than those continuous oxygen delivery methods. But it should be said that there are other cases, as I have already said, there are other cases where you actually need continuous flow oxygen delivery method, and there are other conditions where it is convenient to use these post-dose oxygen concentrators. And what are some takeaways from all this that we have heard today, or we have learned today? So to effectively use these devices, or for the successful implementation of the base flow oxygen generation, there is need for correct device settings and also easier settings, so that the patient can at home can easily set the flow depending on the condition of the patient. And also there's need for regular maintenance and also professional servicing. So this ensures that your machine actually has a long life, and also the efficiency of your machine. But equally important is the patient education for effective use. So you empower the patient to use the device effectively, and also to maintain regular communication with with their doctor or patient provider, healthcare provider, and also to recognize when to seek medical help, and also to manage their condition proactively. To summarize all this, we have seen that the post-dose delivery method has actually revolutionized the oxygen therapy. It has made the devices to become small, portable, to become lightweight, to become efficient at conserving power and also conserving oxygen, and therefore providing comfortability, since you can carry them around, you can move with them around. And also, in total, they are also improving the quality of life. So that was the presentation on oxygen, post-dose oxygen therapy. To post-dose oxygen therapy, to efficiency in oxygen conservation and also power conservation, and to comfortability, I now hand over to Maui for questions and comments. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Dominic and your team. I think that was a wonderful presentation. So I'll now open the floor to the audience for questions and comments. So I have two questions in the chat, and while I am doing that, if someone also has a question in the audience, you are also free to raise your hand, and I will call you up to actually give that question to our engineers after I've read the questions in the chat. So the first question is from Anupam. So they're saying that, is there any feedback system in this machine which decides how much milliliters per breath is required? Also, is there any solenoid valve which will stop high pressure oxygen from cylinders during exhalation? So this is the first question. And the second question is from Michael. And the question says, are there any limitations or potential drawbacks that the patients or provider should be aware of to using this technology? If so, what innovations can biomedical engineers introduce to mitigate those drawbacks? So I'll hand the floor back to our engineers to respond to the two questions that we have. And if any of you also has a question, you can just raise your hands and I'll give you a chance to ask the question. You can go ahead and respond.
Okay, let me answer the first question from Anupam. Yes. So the way I've understood this question is you're asking if there is any feedback system to this machine to decide how much milliliter per breath is required. And also, is there any valve which can stop high pressure from cylinders during exhalation? So my answer to this question is that yes, the modern oxygen delivery system literally has a feedback mechanism to regulate the amount of oxygen delivered per breath. So as I mentioned earlier, I mentioned the issue of the oxygen conservers. As I said that they do divide the oxygen levels in different ratios, and from the number of liters given, it divides it to number of breaths, of which let me give you this simple calculation. If we're giving 1000 milliliters of oxygen, which is 1 liter per minute, these oxygen conservers, they do actually divide this amount of oxygen. If you have put in 3 to 1 as a ratio, so 3 divided by 1000, it is divided into 333 milliliters. Why am I explaining this? It is because here we can see that there is now a regulation and is giving the exact amount of oxygen that you want to give in terms of milliliters per breath. So in as much as there are different ways of how you can portion this oxygen delivery, so they do detect the inhalation and then trigger the release of the oxygen. But now, according to the amount of oxygen set from either the oxygen concentrator or the cylinder, let's say you've set at 5 liters per minute, these oxygen conservers are the ones that will determine the outcome. So we should just be aware of the number of liters set for us to even get the desirable number of breath delivered to the actually patient. So I believe all these things, they are leading to a same thing of conserving oxygen and extending the life of the tank. And now for the solenoid valve part, I can say is that as for stopping the high pressure oxygen flow during exhalation, so they do have the solenoid valves that can be used as part of the system to regulate oxygen delivery. So these valves are electronically controlled, whereby they can open or close based on signals from the sensors that detect the patient's breathing pattern. So even if it is a cylinder where you cannot see the valves as you see in the oxygen concentrator, these oxygen conservers or oxygen regulators, they do have those valves that actually detects the stage at which the patient is at in terms of breathing, whether they are on inhaling stage or they're exhaling. So when they're inhaling, that's when now they open the valves. When they're exhaling, they close the valves. So we can actually see that there is indeed a way of stopping any high pressure oxygen from cylinders during the acceleration process. As also, there is a sensing of the pressure from both sides of the cylinder, as well as the pressure from the patient's lungs. That's how I can answer this question. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Elizabeth, for the response. So we also have another question from Michael. I can just repeat it again. Are there any limitations or potential drawbacks that the patients or provider should be aware of to using this technology? If so, what innovations can biomedical engineers introduce to mitigate those drawbacks? So if anyone has a response to this one, you can also come off mute and give us the response.
Okay, I can just start responding to this question.
Yes, please.
To every technology that we have so far in this world, it has its drawbacks. And one of it is that Dominic, he mentioned that there are issues to do with maybe overbreathing the system, and then you're not having the right amount of oxygen as required by the patient. And also, it needs so much kind of education. The patient care or the patient is supposed to be aware of how this system works in order for them to have the right oxygen therapy. So these limitations, they can actually harm the life of the patient. So if now you're asking, if so, what innovations can biomedical engineers introduce to mitigate those drawbacks? That's where he mentioned of things like incorporating things like telemedicine, make sure that there is close monitoring, and making sure that even the monitoring system are detecting the right things. For example, if we're using a pulse oximeter that is giving us wrong results, would eventually have the system provide the wrong amount of oxygen, right? So I believe that we just have to improve in our innovations of monitoring, like our monitoring systems, to make sure that each and every measurement or recording that we're getting, they're exact in order for us to give the right amount of oxygen to our patient. I don't know, to my fellow engineers, to my fellow presenters, if there is anything that you would like to add on this question.
Yeah, I should just add that there are actually several things that we biomedical engineers can actually do, or we can actually innovate. So she has also mentioned some, but I've just mentioned them also. So there's improved sensor technology that we can actually incorporate in these devices. As we said that there have been some issues that have been reported, especially in sensing the pattern changes in breaths. So we can actually improve those sensor technologies. We can also enhance the battery life so that you should be using those devices for a long time. And also improve on the self-monitoring and diagnostic features that these patients use. So we have said that they actually send data to the doctor so that the doctor should provide feedback. So we can also improve that by, let's say, making those measurements to be sent on the go. While you're measuring, you are also sending at the same time. So no more hassle deciding whether the processes to actually send those data. So you can actually make some innovations on that also. So I think that should be, there are several things that we biomedical engineers can actually do to improve these systems. And if anyone also has something to say, they can also add on it.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I think if anyone else has additional comments, you can just type them in the chat. So we still have 2 minutes and we have one more question in the chat. So this is Lucio from Brazil. So the question says, do you know if a normal oxygen concentrator can be upgraded to pulse oxygen concentrator? Do you know if a normal oxygen concentrator can be upgraded to a pulse oxygen concentrator? So I'll throw this one back to you, panelists.
Yeah, actually, I haven't seen any cases where they have actually made a continuous oxygen flow to become a base flow. To actually make a post flow, you have to be detecting the breaths of the patient. So there will be several things that you have to add there. The detectors, the devices that can actually make those pulses. So you can actually do it if you are innovative, transforming a normal concentrate into a post flow, but there will be several things that you should consider. So mostly detecting the patient's breaths.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Dominic. I don't know if there are any other comments in relation to the same. Can we upgrade a post-dose, a continuous flow to a post-dose? So yeah, I just have to agree with you, Dominic. It's something that I'm pretty sure can be done, because when Elizabeth was sharing about the cylinders, if you look at the cylinders, mostly the controlling of the pulses was being done by the flow meter. So I'm pretty sure you can come up with something or find a way of actually transforming a continuous flow machine to a post-dose. But as it's saying, you need to consider all the different factors that we need to look at. All right. So Anupam, I see you dropped off. You have just joined. So Elizabeth responded to the question that you posted in the chat. But due to time, I think let me refer you to the video recording that we are going to post on our YouTube channel. So you can actually get the recording of the presentation from there. Are there any other questions before we actually wind up our call for today? Okay, so I see there is a comment from Anupam in the chat. So normally in flow meter, we use liters per minute, but here we are talking about milliliters per minute. Can someone clarify on this one? I think he wants to understand the difference that is here.
Okay, that's really true. That our flow meters, if you can see on an oxygen concentrator or the ones that we put maybe on the cylinder, we literally see this calibration to say we are delivering the oxygen in liters per minute. But here, yes, we are talking of milliliters per breath. So the breathing cycle, it happened in a very short time. It's actually in seconds, right? And in as much as it's happening in seconds, but also part of those few seconds, we're just getting the first part of inhalation, which is not even more than 3 seconds, right? So we want to inject, I should use this word, inject another amount of oxygen from an external source using this system. So it would be wise enough to use these little amounts of oxygen to prescribe the dosage. In the first place, I mentioned something like a bolus or a best that comes in the breathing system to actually incorporate or sustain or increase the amount of oxygen the patient is using to maintain the oxygen saturation in the body. So the reason why we are talking of the milliliter per breath is that, for example, yes, we're using a cylinder. This cylinder, we're calculating it in liters, right? But then we want to give our patients milliliters per breath. That's why we are having these oxygen conservers that rations the oxygen liters to these milliliters per breath. So if we're, for example, I will use the same example. If we are giving 1 liter, which is 1,000 milliliters, so we are dividing, let's say, in portion of 3 to 1. So 3 divided by, 1,000 divided by 3, and we're getting now that small amount, which will be the bolus or the burst that will be injected in the breathing cycle of this patient. So there are easy calculations for us to understand and even get these milliliters per breath when we are using the first dose oxygen therapy. I don't know if that answers your question, but okay, there is something also in the chat. You're saying if it is calculated according to number of breaths per minute. Oh, so is it calculated according to number of breaths per minute? It will not be per minute because a cycle does not cover the full 60 seconds. 1 breath cannot take 60 seconds. It's maybe 5 seconds, 1 breath. So if we can calculate in number per minute, then our units, we are not using them very well. I guess that is it.
All right. Thank you very much, Elizabeth, for that clarification. I hope, Anupam, you got your response. All right. So looking at the time, we are at the end of our call. So I would really like to thank you all for joining us for the call today. It's been a wonderful session. I've learned a lot. I hope you have learned a lot as well. For those of you who are requesting for the PPT in the chat, in order for you to get more details, I think it would be best if you just watch the recording. So we record these calls and we normally post them on our Facebook page and on our YouTube channel. I'm going to post the links in the chat so you can stick around until you get the links, and then later on you can actually refer to those ones. So I'd like to thank you all for joining us for today's call, and I'd like to wish you a wonderful weekend. So until next time, it's goodbye for now.